Good evening. So today was the second day of Rosh Chodesh Adar. Yesterday was the first day of Rosh Chodesh, that is the 30th of the month of Shvat, but we call it Rosh Chodesh Adar. Today started Adar, but today started Adar Rishon, or the first Adar, and we're going to have a second month of Adar coming up in a month's time. So we're 2 months away from this and the festival of Pesach, which occurs then. And let's try and explore and understand a little bit the mystery of the leap year, the Jewish leap year. The secular leap year occurs every 4 years. It's an extra day on the 29th of February. And that's pretty simple and pretty straightforward, although there are some complications and some quirks, which I'll show you in a moment. The Jewish leap year seems to be far more complicated because it doesn't arrive with the same level of regularity. There's no quick formula, although I'll show you the formula, which is actually fairly quick in a moment, to know which years are going to be leap years. But let's try and understand, what it's all about. Well, why do we add 1 day every 4 years to the secular calendar, and why do we add about a month, roundabout every 3 years, to the Jewish calendar? What is that all about? How does it work? And what is the significance of perhaps some lessons and learnings and teachings for us? So let's begin by defining a year and a month, and at the same time look at various types of calendars that exist in various cultures. So what is a year? A year is basically a repetition of a full cycle of the sun, a full solar cycle, where the sun has kind of come back to the place where it was exactly a year before, and the sun revolves around the earth, or the earth revolves around the sun, whichever you want to look at it, not exactly in the shape, because it's a little bit off to the side. Hence we have different seasons, winter, summer, and so forth. The time it takes for this complete revolution circle is a year. So say if this would be spring right over here, or let's say this was summer, because I think spring, winter would be further, whatever it is. If this would be spring, which we consider to be the renewal, the new season that starts, it would take a year for the sun to now be back in the same place in the sky, and for it to be spring again, having gone through a summer, an autumn, a summer, an autumn, a winter, and then back to spring again. That's a year. That's a full year. And so we know that the solar cycles repeat themselves, and so the equinox and so forth, and what's the other one called? Equinox and solstice occur at the same date every single year. And you have an equinox, you have a solstice, equinox, solstice, and so forth. So that is a year. A year is basically that cycle, and the duration of a year is 365 and a quarter days. Don't forget that quarter, because we'll come back to that in a moment. That quarter is quite important. So that's a year. So cultures that have a solar cycle, sun-based, seasons-based calendar, will simply take that 365 and a quarter. They will divide that by 12 and get approximately 30.5 days, which is why some months will be 30 days and other months will be 31. So January 31, February, that's an interesting one, 28, and then 31 again for March, and so forth. But of course, there was a bit of an issue there with July and August, I think, going back to the Caesars after which they were named. Both wanted big months, and so they're two in succession, and that caused a bit of havoc anyway, that we had to shorten other months. But basically, the cycle is we take a year, which is 365, so we've got a true year, but because we want to have 12 months, we end up with 30 and a half days, which would give us months of 30 or 31 days. And that's basically what we call the secular calendar or the solar calendar, which is what most cultures around the world actually follow, is that calendar. And it's very simple, it's straightforward. It's a real year, but as you'll see in a moment, it's a fake month. It's a real year, it's a fake month. Let's come back to that quarter. Because it's 365 and a quarter, then every 4 years you've lost a day, because the real cycle is a quarter. So that's why we have every 4 years, the 29th of February. Problem is, it's not exactly perfectly 365 and a quarter. There are some decimals there, and those were ignored for a very long time. It was only about a century ago that this was righted, when I think it was Pope Gregory, hence the name, the Gregorian calendar, was instituted, and that's why they had to skip, I think, about 11 or 18 days to just go forward, which were, leap years that had to be done away with. It was a complicated thing. There's a new rule that now tells us that every 100 years we actually leave one leap year off. And that's how it's kind of been made to balance out. But that is a solar calendar in which the years are real, but the months are fake. Why do I say that the months are fake? Because what is a month? A month is actually a lunar cycle, a cycle of the moon. Just as we looked at the picture of the orbit of the sun, while there is the orbit of the Earth around the sun, the moon also goes around the Earth. And it takes a month to do this. So a real month is the circle of the moon around the Earth. Now that is a duration of 29 and a half days. 29 and a half days. If you want to have a lunar calendar, and some cultures have a lunar calendar, then you simply take the duration of a month as 29 and a half days, you multiply by 12, and you get to something which is close to a year. Well, close, but not exactly. You're a little bit short. If you follow a lunar calendar, as, for example, Muslims do, you have real months that are 29 and a half days, but you have fake years because they're a little bit short of the 365 days. And that's why we have in that calendar the interesting situation of the months of the year traveling around the seasons. And not being at a fixed time of year. So we're very aware of that because living in a country where there are many Muslims around us, we know that Ramadan is observed as their holy month, and that fluctuates. And every few years it moves into a new season, going back all the time because a year is too short. It doesn't fit in with the seasons of the sun. So that's how we understand the Christian calendar, so to speak, the Muslim calendar. Ours is an interesting hybrid calendar. Why do I say that? Because we are going to try and have real months and real years, and I'm going to show you why that's extremely important. And that's based on the instructions we have in our Torah about how our calendar should work. So if you look at the solar calendar, it's 365 days. Well, let's forget the quarter now, it's not so important. The lunar year is 354, and so there's a shortfall of 11 years. And because of the conundrum I'm going to show you now, we can't afford to lose those 11 days because that will put us in the same situation as, for example, the Muslim calendar, which really does not work for us. Why so? Well, here is the first mitzvah we were given as a nation. We were still in Egypt. As you can see, Hashem is speaking to Moshe and Aaron, and they're still in Mitzrayim. But it's already Erev Exodus. We're about to leave the land, and 2 weeks before, they get this instruction. And it says, Rosh Chodashim. This month is for you the beginning of the months. But our sages tell us that in those words, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, is the system of the calendar. All the mitzvahs of the Jewish calendar, first mitzvah that we were given as a people, just before we leave Egypt, and we're now facing nationhood ahead of us, is the mitzvah of having a calendar of our own. In other words, we're now going to celebrate according to our own calendar. We're going to sanctify time in a sense. And we're told that we have to have Rosh Chodashim, beginning of months. So at the simple sense, it's telling us here that this month, it's a month of Nisan, it's a month that's just begun, and they're about to leave Mitzrayim 2 weeks later, 15th, 14th at night. That's going to be the beginning of all months. It's going to be called Chodesh HaRishon, the first of the months, and then Iyar, the second month, and so forth. So that's the literal meaning of the verse, that we're going to count the calendar according to the month of Pesach, which of course makes sense. That was a birth of our nation, and our calendar is going to follow that most important momentous event in our history. But commentaries say that Hashem showed him at that point how to declare a new month. And Hashem said to him, look at the moon, it has a cycle, and when the moon looks like this, meaning new moon, because it was Rosh Chodesh that he was being spoken to, then you make a new month, and then it's Chodesh, beginning of a new month. So of course, we know that the moon goes through those cycles of new moon, and then waxing, and then waning again, and then you have the final crescent, and then we start all over again with the new moon. Hashem's basically saying that at some point over here, even before the moon is visible to a naked eye, but some point here is what we call the molad, or the new moon that is just appearing, even if not yet visible. And at that point, you have to declare it Rosh Chodesh. So we're basically told that our months have got to be true lunar moon months. How long is that? 29 and a half days, as I showed you earlier. Obviously, we're not going to declare Rosh Chodesh in the middle of the day. The actual time of the new moon, for example, for this month of Adar was yesterday afternoon at about 3 o'clock. We couldn't suddenly at 3 o'clock say new month begins. New month started at nightfall. So we have months that alternate between 29 and 30 days, and that pretty much gives you that 29 and a half days. But we can't just follow lunar months because of this instruction here, which is also in our Torah, in the book of Devarim. We're told that you have to make sure that you guard the spring month. Chodesh Aviv, the month of Aviv, is the month of spring. The spring northern hemisphere occurs at the time of the spring equinox. And you have to make sure that Pesach is observed during that month, which is the spring month, because that's how the Exodus occurred. Of course, the Exodus was in the northern hemisphere. It was the time of spring, and there are lots of reasons for that, which we won't go into now. So you have to observe Pesach during that month. So what can we do? We cannot really follow a lunar month, because that would make our festivals travel throughout the year. We got to make a system to compensate. And this is where we come up with the idea of adding a year from time to time. So when we find that Pesach is going to suddenly slip back into winter and not be in spring, that's when we have to add a month to our calendar. So that's how the system of leap years that add a month from time to time, how often will that be? Approximately every 3 years, because of course 11 days is the gap. If you're going to add a month, it's going to be about every 3. It can be every 3 years, because that won't work, because that'll be too often, because it's 11 days. So you're going to have to, work it out and find a formula to make this happen. Now, why are we following a lunar calendar? Because we as a people are compared to the moon. Moon becomes a symbol of the Jewish people. And why is that? Because unlike the sun, whose light is constant and shines all the time, the fortune of the Jewish people is one that has followed cycles. We've waxed and we've waned. And so we are therefore compared to the moon, in that there may be periods of exile, times of darkness, but then there are times when the moon shines fully again. And in fact, we have a special bracha we make when a new moon appears called Kiddush Levana. When we make Kiddush Levana, we say the words that the Jewish nation are going to be renewed just as the month has just been reborn and is going to reach its fullness in 2 weeks' time. And you may have noticed that all the festivals on our calendar, most of them are at mid-month. 14th or 15th of the month, from Sukkot to Purim to Pesach. Those are Chagim that are celebrated mid-month to Bishvat, because that's when kind of the strength of the Jewish people is at its ultimate, at its strongest. So how does it work? How do we work out this system of having to adjust the calendar? Well, we're lucky today we have a printed calendar. We look up, in Hebrew it's called a luach, and we know exactly when our chagim are going to be. It wasn't always that way. It wasn't always that way. Going back, it was a decision that had to be made monthly for the month and annually for the year by our highest court, the Sanhedrin. In order to declare a new month, there had to be a physical sighting of the new moon. And so anybody who was within kind of close distance to Jerusalem, saw the new moon, would come to Jerusalem and testify in front of the Sanhedrin that they observed the appearance of the new moon. They would be cross-examined and questioned to make sure that they weren't, just making up the story. There were Sadducees at the time who tried to really create absolute havoc with their calendars. As a result, they had to cross-examine the witnesses. Should their testimony be found to be genuine and true, then Rosh Chodesh would be declared. So it could be on ad hoc basis every month, 29 or 30 days, depending on, when witnesses came and how easy it was to see the moon, depending on the seasons, depending on how clear the sky would be, and so forth. So that varied. The decision about whether a year should have an extra month was one that was made also by a specially convened court. The Sanhedrin appointed. It was a very interesting ceremony, and then they called initially a group of 3 people, and then they added 2 judges to the panel, making it 5, and then they added a further 2 judges, making it 7. And the proceedings would begin with 3, continue with 5, and conclude with 7, and that would be how they would decide. Now, what factors would they take into account? People had to come on pilgrimage on Pesach, so the roads had to be passable. If there were a lot of rains or a lot of snow, and the roads and the bridges would have collapsed and the roads would have been muddy, people couldn't come on pilgrimage, taken into account. They had to offer sacrifices when they came, and if the sheep hadn't yet reproduced and born little babies, lambs, then it wasn't a good time. Also a good reason to add a month. If they calculated that Pesach would occur back in winter, another reason to add a month is they would take all of these economic factors, meteorological factors, conditions of roads. They had to have new barley for the Omer offering. If the barley hadn't ripened, they wouldn't be able to. So all of these were taken into account, and a decision was made: will this year have 12 months, or will this year have 13 months? And the reason why they had this very interesting kind of permutation composition of that court was for the following. They wanted that the process of instituting a new month should fall under blessing, should be blessed by Hashem. What's our ultimate blessing? Birkat Kohanim. Look at the 3 verses, 3 words, 5 words, and finally 7 words. So for that reason, they would, instead of convening the 7-man court immediately, begin by just inviting 3 judges on the panel, and then invite a further 2, and then another 2, and in that way, the month would meet with absolute. The decision about the new year would meet with absolute blessing. This process called Ibur Shana. Ibur is like making pregnant. So making a year pregnant by adding a month was one that could only be done by a Sanhedrin. As conditions became adverse, particularly the Roman authorities, they did not want the Sanhedrin to exist, so they forbade the process of smicha, where one member of Sanhedrin would occur the qualification on another, so that the process could continue. And the Romans tried everything to block that, to stop that. So there was a sage called Hillel, and Hillel saw that this Sanhedrin would not continue, and therefore, once that stopped, one of the most important foundations of the Jewish people is our calendar. First mitzvah, as I mentioned earlier, that was going to fall apart. So he devised a formula. A calendar is calculated according to certain algorithms and rules that would work until the end of the current millennium, the Jewish millennium, 6th millennium, by which time Mashiach has to come, and he needs to worry about those issues. So that according to the rules that he established, we know exactly when Rosh Chodesh is going to be. We know how long every single year is going to be. And he worked out that the moon and the sun kind of came together in a 19-year cycle. This is why you may be familiar with the phenomenon that your Jewish date of birth is the same as your secular date of birth on your 19th birthday and all subsequent birthdays in multiples of 19. That's because the lunar and the solar cycles come back in sync. And I'm not going to show the calculation to you, now it's a bit more involved, every 19 years. So he built a calendar based on a 19-year cycle. And according to his calculations, we no longer have to, of course, rely on that Sanhedrin convening a court, because that's not possible, but rather what we do is follow this simple rule. We work out where in the cycle we are. Year 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19 are the years that are going to be leap years. So it's actually pretty simple to work it out. You take the number of the year. So for example, 5, 7, 8, 2, our current year is the year that we're going to take to find out if it's a leap year or not. We're going to divide that by 19. And once we do that, of course, we have to do it now with a calculator or on a piece of paper, long division, you end up with the remainder. And the remainder is going to be, of course, which year in the cycle you are. So if you do that very quickly at home, you're going to find out. You can also do it on the calculator and then take the decimal moves and multiply them by 19. That also works. You're going to find out that we are currently in year 6 of the 19-year cycle. And accordingly, this year 6 is a leap year. Now, sometimes, leap years occur after 2 years, but sometimes they have 3-year gaps. And of course, 3-year gaps pull you back and pull all the Jewish dates earlier until it's a leap year again. So you have another 2-year gap, and there's 2-year gaps. And of course, what we've just had now is 3 consecutive 3-year gaps, because we went from 19 to 3. And now we're at 6, and because we've had these 2 big gaps, our calendar has kind of gone as early as it could. So you remember that we observed the first day of Hanukkah in November. That's rare. That only occurs, when there's been a long time without leap years. We also had, all the festivals, Yartzeit and so forth, falling very early this year. And that's the reason, because we are in kind of a situation where we haven't had leap years for a long time, or they've been very spaced, so we've fallen behind in the calendar, but it's coming right now, because Pesach is going to get pushed forward by a month. What's besides all these calculations and the mathematics, what does it mean to us? Well, first of all, the immediate lesson is that one can fix things that are missing in the past. And we look back and we sometimes say to ourselves, yes, it's true. I've messed up. I offended somebody, I hurt their feelings, I wasn't honest in dealing with them, whether it's materially dishonest or emotionally, intellectually dishonest, whatever it is. But you know what? Time's passed. This was a long time ago. And let bygones be bygones. You can't really turn the clock back. And basically, the Jewish leap year teaches us a lesson to each one of us that you can turn the clock back and you can fix somehow problems that have occurred in the past, so that the fact that we've slipped behind against the cycles of the sun doesn't mean, as we say in Yiddish, is farfallen, that it's gone and it's past and there's nothing that we can do about it at all. And that's a powerful lesson from the leap year, that we can now, today, fix things. So it's 2 months of Adar, and it's a time to ponder. Let's look back not just at what happened today and make mistakes and try to fix them quickly, but what happened in the past, even the not so recent past. Can we do something to make things right as far as that's concerned? And that's of course a practical life lesson to all of us from the leap year. But why Adar? Well, practically makes sense because it's all based on having Pesach in spring, on having the month of Nisan, Chodesh Aviv. So it makes sense that the adjustment should be made just prior to Nisan, because that's the last month, and that gives you maximum time to actually look at the seasons, because it was very, when it wasn't based on Hillel's calculation, but based on looking at the elements, looking at the seasons, looking at the rain, at the weather, and so forth. The longer you left the decision, the better it was. And you actually had, until Nisan began, you had the option of saying, we're going to do a second Adar. Once it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it was too late. Next month has begun, but until the last day in Adar, you could declare it still to be a leap year, so you give yourself maximum time, but it probably goes beyond that. Of all months, which should have been chosen? Adar has the amazing property of being the joy month, the happy month of our calendar. We say Adar marbin b'simcha. When the month of Adar comes in, we increase in joy. Our natural state as Jewish people is to be always in a state of joy. But when Adar comes in, we particularly joyous. Which month should we have chosen to be the doubled one? The month of Av, which it says the reverse in the Gemara. When the month of Av comes in, we need to decrease in our joy. So we're happy also, but not as happy as the rest of the months. Would we want a month that's not so happy to be a double month? Definitely not. So there's a good reason why it's a month that has an inherent happy nature. Of course, the celebration of Purim, the fact that it's the month of the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, and so forth. Those are good, powerful reasons why we would want to, celebrate double that particular month. What happens when you have 2 months in a row of joy? Well, a month lasts 30 days, 2 months is 60 days. Is there significance to that number 60? Think about it. We know that 7 is a powerful month. We know about that number. We know about 10 is a powerful number. We know about 13 as a powerful number. We know about 40 as a powerful number. What's the significance of the number 60? It has relevance, and this may come back to you in a moment. It has relevance when you have an issue in the kitchen, and there's been a mixture of foods where something treif, or maybe some a meat falls into a meat milk pot or reverse. So we say if the proportion is 60, then it is nullified. So here we have 60 days of joy that have the power of nullification over all negative elements. And boy, There's been plenty of elements of opposite of joy that we've experienced in the past 2 years. We've all had all kinds of sorrows and pains that have surrounded us all along. Now we have a period of 2 months to take all of these negative elements, 60 days of joy to nullify all pain, all upsets, all negative elements, made the prevailing emotion be simcha for the next 2 months and beyond. Thank you.